With him come waves of reform in Burma, including, over a 16-month period, the release of more than 650 of Burma's political prisoners. These releases attract widespread international media coverage and contribute to the lifting of economic and development sanctions on Burma. In March 2012, President Thein Sein publicly announces that there are no longer any political prisoners in Burma's jails. But even as the president makes this statement, ongoing ethnic conflict and the continuing detention of political activists call into question the ability of Burma's fledgling parliament to control Burma's military and other security forces.
So, in order to solve Burmese problem, Burmese government must immediately solve like the three problems. One is to release all political prisoners. Second is to stop war on ethnic minorities. Third is to stop human rights violation, and then to take an action to those who committed human rights violations. Without solving those problems, Burma will not get peace. So,
solution set up and so that so the Luto Rema, Sombia 9 Yakanoga, the Setane, Setagani video, Pianelare, the Queen of Matea, and I you'd had the Toto Guzene, Chapo Guzene, Chenny to her. Nataka, Kunasanga, Yanganoma, Mate Wuzu, the Ubri, Pisangue Mayare, Pisani, Chenny, Kataro, who sit there. Also, I am a teaching. Sit down, Papa, and Toro Pianelumia. I was set up so we are chinning Tonorua. The sit down, but now Joe Amleso, Pesanuia, who I go on Muti. Also, Dignetama Udesiga, Tonomami the Long Hajim, Temane, the kind of Chimbinema, Sebori Yapo, Tosi Yapo, Kaweuzi, Joe, maybe Haviva. I'm going to Haviva. To a message, Jacamiaba.
Parliament cannot have power now. Parliament cannot control the government. Parliament cannot control the army. So we have a lot of challenges. In the meanwhile, arrests is still continue. Civil war is still continue. Many kinds of human rights violations are still happening. For example, forced labor, forced border, like the rape cases, land confiscation, also peaceful demonstrators arrests.
When they were arrested, they were also constantly questioned for the whole night. That's still the same. So when family asks, well, our children were taken to, they said they didn't have. So still the same. This situation is still the same. So family members, they don't know where their loved one was to take. Their law, it said, okay, people are allowed to protest, but it's still many of restriction and it's still dangerous.
On the Thailand-Burma border, there is one organisation working on behalf of Burma's political prisoners. The Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, better known as AAPP, was founded by 10 former political prisoners on the 3rd of March 2000, the 11th anniversary of the arrest of prominent student leader Ko Min Ko Nine.
ABB 2008 Jin down in Manila, Piodama, Piodala, Sicilian, Manda, Amai to get a Shiva. Tome, General Jauja, General Mimanama, Samushivan, so is the Gashivan. Ta, Shinidan, Tower Ludan, Mimaya and Nigo. So that they don't see a look over. Tome, General Tower Ludan Jima. Tome, General Tower Ludan Jima, Mapioga. Ta, Yuda. လုံးဝမပြောခဲ့ပါဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်လူပဲအချင်းတော်တွေကထွက်လာတဲ့နိုင်ငံရေးအချင်းသားလေးအသီးသီးကထောင်ကလွတ်တဲ့နေမှာကျွန်တော်လူပဲမပြောခဲ့ဘူးဆိုတာကိုကျွန်တော်သိခဲ့ရပါတယ်ဆိုတော့အဲ့လိုထွက်လာပြီးတဲ့အခြေကဘာလို့မပြောရလဲဆိုတော့ထောင်ထဲမှာကျွန်တော်တို့ ਨੇ ရုပ်ပေါ်ကိုင်မဲလေးရဲဘော်ရဲပဲလေးကြားနေကြတယ်ကျွန်တော်တို့ပဲဆက်ခံစားနေရအောင်ပါဆိုတော့အဲ့ဒီအသိဉာဏ်ကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ကမပြောခဲ့တာပါနောက်တစ်ခုကကျွန်တော်တို့အချင်းတော်တွေကလွတ်လာခဲ့တဲ့လူတိုင်းကနိုင်ငံရေးပြစ်မှုနဲ့နိုင်ငံရေးမှုနဲ့ထောင်ချပြီးတော့ပြန်လွတ်လာတဲ့လူတိုင်းကျွန်တော်တို့တူညီတဲ့အသိစိတ်လေးတစ်ခုစီပါလာကြတယ်ဒါကဘာလဲဆိုတော့အချင်းတော်တွေမှာရှိနေတဲ့လူတွေကိုကူညီရမယ်သူတို့ရဲ့လွတ်မြောက်ရေးအတွက်ကြိုးပမ်းရမယ်ဆိုတဲ့စိတ်အဲ့ဒီစိတ်ကကျွန်တော်ပြောရဲပါတယ်အချင်းတော်တွေကထွက်လာတဲ့လူတိုင်းစီမှာဒီစိတ်ကထောင်ထဲကထွက်လာတာနဲ့အတူပါလာတဲ့စိတ်ပါ
It's amazing being here whenever someone is released because a lot of them are family members of, let's say, AK or Koboji or Mazulu or their friends, and usually the guys here are very, they're very strong and very emotionally strong. But sometimes I see out of the corner of my eye they might tear up a bit, when they hear of a release, and it's really quite endearing, and it makes me realize, why I'm here and why everyone's doing what they're doing.
Mainly what our intention is to lobby and advocacy for the release of all political prisoners. So still like we continue doing. Also one of our objectives is to reconstruct the life for the released political prisoners. What we are doing is rehabilitation program for the released political prisoners. Assistance to the political prisoner families is also important because many of the political prisoners are breadwinners of the families. When they were arrested, their family economic situation is really worse. But at least like partially we could help them. It means scholarship program for political prisoner children and released political prisoner children. It means we understand that education is vital for change in Burma.
If some people is seriously need for accommodation, for health, and also for job, we help as much as we can. Mostly, most political prisoners, they had been tortured during interrogation, so they were severely beaten, punched. So APP has a mental health program to take care of, to give assistance for the political prisoner.
The second broad objective of AAPP has been advocacy focusing on the recognition, release and rights of Burma's political prisoners. To this end, over the years AAPP has initiated or collaborated on a number of very successful campaigns. One of these, in 2009, was the Free Political Prisoners in Burma Now campaign, in which, in a United Nations first, more than 700,000 signatures were presented to the UN Secretary-General, Ban Ki-moon. Like other campaigns, this campaign ensured that Burma's political prisoners maintained a presence in the international media spotlight.
ကြိုပြီးတော့တည်ရဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်ထောင်ထဲမှာမီဒီယာနဲ့မပြတ်ဘူးမီဒီယာနဲ့မပြတ်အောင်လည်းကြက်ကုတ်ကြက်ကြိုးစားထားတယ်အဲ့ဒီမီဒီယာတွေကနေပြီးလာတယ်ဒေါ်စန်းစုကြည်ရဲ့နဲ့ဒီ RFA နဲ့ interview ကျွန်တော်နားထောင်ရတယ်နောက်တစ်ခါကိုပေါ်တို့ပြောတာတွေကိကျူ interview တာတွေမှာကျွန်တော်နာမည်တွေပါတယ်နောက်ပိုင်းတဖြည်းဖြည်းနဲ့တန်ဖိုးကမြင့်လာတာလည်းသိတယ်အဲ့တော့ကျွန်တော်တစ်ချိန်ချင်းတော့လွတ်မယ်ဆိုတော့သိကြတယ်ဘယ်လိုချင်းမိတာလဲဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်ဇူလိုင်လကျွန်တော်ရက်ဆွဲအတိအကျမမေ့သွားပြီ19ရက်နေ့လောက်မှထင်တယ်ကျွန်တော်လာပြီးတော့လေးတယ်ညဘက်ကြီးမှာခင်ဗျအမှုတွေဘယ်နှယောက်ရှိလဲအမှုတွေရဲ့နာမည်ကိုရေးပါဆိုပြီးတော့ပြောတယ်အဲ့ဒီအချိန်မှာကျွန်တော်ကဒီအိမ်ဟာပြောရတယ်မင်းတကယ်ချင်းနေရတဲ့မင်းကိုလွတ်မြောက်ရေးတောင်းဆိုမှုတွေလုပ်နေကြတယ်ပေါ့အဲကျန်တဲ့တခြားအဖွဲ့အစည်းတွေကလည်း Amnesty International တို့ဘာလို့စသဖြင့်ဝိုင်းတောင်းကြတာတွေကျွန်တော်အိမ်ဟာပြောတော့ကျွန်တော်သိရတယ်သိရတဲ့ခါကျတော့ဒီတောင်းတာတွေနဲ့ဆက်ဆက်ပြီးတော့ဒါလာမေးတာနေပါပဲလို့ကျွန်တော်တွက်လို့ရတယ်တွက်လို့ရတော့တော်တော်မယ်ထင်တယ်လို့အဲ့လိုမျိုး
တိကျရေးတော့သိတာမဟုတ်ကျွန်တော်ကြိုတင်ခန့်မှန်းနိုင်ပါ
9ယောက်ကျန်တယ်အဲ့ဒီ9ယောက်ကဘာဖြစ်လို့မလွတ်သေးလဲဆိုတော့သူတို့မလွတ်ပေးခြင်းလို့မလွတ်တော့ဘူးဗျာတကယ်တမ်းဒီလူတွေကိုနွေ့နွေ့ထွေးထွေးနဲ့စကားပြောကြည့်မယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တိုင်းပြည်ကိုကောင်းဖို့အတွက်လုပ်မဲ့လူတွေကြီးပဲတိုင်းပြည်ကိုညစ်ပတ်အောင်စုပ်ပြတ်အောင်လုပ်မဲ့လူတယောက်မှမပါဘူးကျွန်တော်လည်းအကုန်စကားပြောကြည့်ပြီးပါပြီ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီနိုင်ငံရေးအကျဉ်းသားတွေကဟိုးအရင်ရင်တွေကကျွန်တော်အများအားပြောနေတဲ့စကားတွေရှိပါတယ်ဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်နေမဟုတ်ပါဘူးဒါကနိုင်ငံတကာကတော့ဟိုအဲ့လိုပဲမြင်နေတာရှိပါတယ်ဆိုတော့နိုင်ငံရေးအကျဉ်းသားတွေဆိုတာကဒီနိုင်ငံရေးရအုပ်ချုပ်တဲ့လူတွေကတစံခံနဲ့ထိနေကြတာပါ
It's very, very sad. The high-profile ones are used as bargaining chips, which is dehumanizing for one. But on the other hand, that means that their releases are pretty much, well, have been secured because there's been a lot of advocacy around them. But the ones who are forgotten, they'll just remain behind bars.
What we ask for is to recognize the existence of political prisoners and then to release them unconditionally. Now the way they release the political prisoner is conditional release, and then they do not recognize them as political prisoners. So therefore I am dissatisfied with the government for such kind of release. Meanwhile, there are more than 400 political prisoners that remain in prison.
လွတ်ပေးလိုက်ပြီးတဲ့အပြင်ကိုသူတို့ကိုတတ်ထားတဲ့ပုံမှန်တွေပြစ်မှုတွေကိုရုပ်သိမ်းပေးရမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါမှချွင်းချက်မရှိလို့ခေါ်မယ်နောက်တစ်ခုကအနှောက်ဖွဲ့ကင်းမရမယ်ဥပမာဒီကနေ့လွတ်ပေးလိုက်တဲ့400နဲ့လွတ်ပေးလိုက်တယ်ဆိုတဲ့ကိစ္စမျိုးကအချိန်မီနောက်အချိန်မီပြန်ဖမ်းလို့ရသလိုနောက်အမှုတစ်ခုခုနဲ့ပြန်ပြီးတော့နိုင်ငံရေးမှုတစ်ခုခုနဲ့ပြန်ဖမ်းခံရမယ်ဆိုရင်ဒီနှစ်လေကြက်ခံခဲ့တဲ့ကြံခဲ့တဲ့နှစ်လေပါနောက်ကြောင်းပြန်ခံစားရမယ်အနေထားမျိုးရှိပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါတွေကချင်းချက်လို့ပြောလို့ရပါတယ်
For former political prisoners, they have faced difficulties to get a job.
For example, is lawyers. They could not get with their license. Doctors, they could not get with their license.
Some of them, they are not allowed to continue their study.
Students, they could not go back to their universities.
They were not permitted to get passport.
This means not only they are given punishment when they are in prison, they are given punishment after they were released. It means if you have been once political prisoners in Burma, your life is always under arrest.
On the 30th of July 2012, United Nations Special Rapporteur to Burma, Mr. Thomas Quintana, met delegations from a number of political and social organisations, including the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners. Only days before, Mr. Quintana had had the opportunity to meet with some of the political prisoners still languishing in Burma's most notorious jails.
So I had the chance to have a very meaningful conversation with the political prisoners, and then I had a chance to talk to the authorities about their situation, to raise again the issue of the importance that these people are released as soon as possible. And I also had a chance to discuss the issue with the international community, with some member states of the United Nations, that I believe that they have a responsibility on this, for these people not to be forgotten, because as again it's important for the democratic transition that there are no political prisoners in Myanmar. It's very important because first these people who are under detention, they deserve to be released, because the detention is arbitrary. There's no legal basis for them to still be in jail. But also I believe that they have an important role to play in this democratic transition. These are all people committed to peace, to peace building, to democracy, and it's definitely important, and they deserve the right to participate in this process.
As well as the need to release all political prisoners, AAPP urged Mr. Quintana to keep the use of torture by Burma's security forces on the United Nations agenda. AAPP maintains that torture is systematic, is part of state policy, and that perpetrators of torture should be held accountable for their actions.
Yeah. Also, another thing is international community is forgot to talk about torturers, especially army. Who cannot control the army? No one can control the army now. I am not talking about the past. I am talking now. Now like we have several cases.
There are many complaints, including the names and ranks of the security officers who committed the torture.
So yes, I received information in Kachin State, the army, kidnapping these villagers and torturing them. I discussed this with the Home Minister of France about my concern. One of the problems at the same time is that there is not really a rule of law functioning in the country, so we don't see judges holding this kind of action against those who committed torture.
In addition to advocating for the unconditional release of all political prisoners and an end to the use of torture, AAPP diligently monitors political prisoner numbers, prisoner profiles, the circumstances of detention, and then makes this information readily accessible to the international community. The organisation also lobbies for the international community to recognise that those who have taken up arms in defence of democracy and human rights are also legitimate political prisoners.
Burmese people are still fighting for their rights. So therefore, it means not only non-violent but also resistant means exist in Burma. So therefore, we need to be really careful whenever we talk about political prisoners or prisoner conscience. Prisoner conscience is very simple thing. It means non-violent. Those who are doing peaceful demonstration. Political prisoner means those who involved in their resistance movement. In Burma there is a civil war. We should recognize those who are fighting for their rights. If we do not recognize them as political prisoners, how do we solve the problem in Burma?
And as organisations increasingly look to working inside Burma, AAPP lobbies the Burmese government for an infrastructure that will protect and support political prisoners and by so doing help the process of national reform and reconciliation.
Burma is an unhealthy society. Burma is trauma society. We need to do a lot of rehabilitation programs. But in Africa, so they're a former political prisoner organization officially. So they can do workshop, they can do training, they can do vocational training, also maybe counseling or